Life often shatters us in ways we never imagined. Sometimes it's not the fall that breaks us, but the belief that we can never rise again. But what if every scar carried within it the seed of strength? What if every broken dream could still bloom into something even more beautiful? This is the story of a woman who lost everything she thought defined her. Her body, her dreams, her family, yet discovered a power far greater than she had ever known, the power to rebuild herself from the ashes. She was just 18, too young to understand the weight of a lifetime decision, yet too obedient to say no. Growing up in a strict and conservative family, she had been taught that a good daughter never questions her parents' wishes. So when her father decided she should marry, she agreed without protest. Not because she wanted to, but because she thought her silence was a gift of loyalty. Marriage, however, did not bring her joy. It was a union built not on love but on duty, and slowly, the emptiness inside her grew louder. She carried herself with grace, but deep down she knew that her dreams of becoming an artist had quietly died the moment she stepped into a role she had never chosen. She smiled for her family, but inside, she was lost in a world that didn't belong to her. The quiet yes that once pleased her father had now become a chain around her heart. 2 years into that marriage, life gave her a twist more brutal than anything she had endured before. On an ordinary night, while traveling with her husband, their car slipped off the road into a deep ditch. Her husband managed to jump free, saving himself. But she remained trapped inside. The crushing weight of metal twisted around her body, and in those moments she felt her dreams and her future collapsing too. The rescue came, but it was chaotic. Strangers dragging her from the wreck, desperate hands trying to save her, yet unknowingly worsening her injuries. Her ribs cracked, her arm shattered, her shoulder and collarbone splintered. But none of these compared to the injury that would change her life forever. Her spinal cord was completely severed. In an instant, the girl who once feared silence now faced a silence inside her own body, a silence where movement used to be. The hospital became her prison for months, its white walls staring back at her, mocking her helplessness. Machines beeped, doctors whispered, and every day seemed like a cruel reminder of everything she had lost. First came the verdict she would never walk again. Then another. Her damaged spine meant she could never carry a child. And the final blow. Her right hand, once graceful with a paintbrush, was now deformed and weak. Each announcement felt like another nail sealing her fate. She tried to breathe, but despair suffocated her. She often wondered why she had survived the crash at all. Was life punishing her? Or was there some hidden reason she couldn't yet see? Nights were the hardest, when the silence of the ward echoed with her unanswered questions. She was alive, yet felt as if she had already died. One day, as grief weighed heavily on her chest, she turned to her brothers and said something unexpected. "Bring me colors. Bring me a canvas." Even with her deformed hand, even with her broken body, she longed for the one dream she had buried long ago, painting. When the colors arrived, she touched the brush with trembling fingers and began to paint her pain. The canvas became her voice, her silent scream, her prayer. Those first strokes were shaky, but they carried her truth. People who visited admired the beauty of her work, saying, "So colorful, so full of life." But only she knew that behind those bright hues lay the depth of her sorrow. Still, it was the first time in months that she felt alive. Painting became her therapy, her rebellion against despair. In every brushstroke, she whispered to herself, "I am still here." As she painted, she realized that life would never give her back what she had lost, but it had given her something else, courage. She began writing down her fears, one by one, on paper. The first and greatest was divorce. In her culture, leaving a marriage carried shame, but living in that marriage carried chains. One day, she chose freedom over fear. She let him go, and with that act, she freed herself too. The second fear was motherhood, the devastating belief that she would never hold a child of her own. Yet, instead of surrendering to grief, she opened her heart to adoption. She registered her name in orphanages and waited. And when a call finally came, telling her that a newborn baby boy needed a home, her heart overflowed. Holding that fragile life in her arms, she felt something she thought was gone forever: purpose. She was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to live again. Motherhood reshaped her life in ways she never imagined. The tiny boy she held was not just her son. He was her heartbeat, her second chance at life. Each time she looked into his innocent eyes, she saw not her own pain, but pure love. She realized that being a mother was never about biology. It was about nurturing, about giving unconditional acceptance. The child who once had no one now had a home, and she who once thought herself broken now felt whole again. Every cry, every laugh, every little hand wrapped around her finger reminded her that her story was not about loss anymore, but about transformation. Strength, she discovered, was not the ability to walk or to be perfect. Strength was the courage to keep showing up for someone who depended on her. And in giving love, she healed the wounds no doctor could mend. Though she had rebuilt her heart, a new fear crept in. The fear of society's gaze. Would people ever accept her in a wheelchair? Would she forever be seen as incomplete? In a world obsessed with perfection, her broken body often felt like a target for pity or judgment. But one day, she decided she would not hide anymore. She began appearing in public, rolling her wheelchair with pride instead of shame. At first, people stared, some whispered, others avoided eye contact. But the more she showed up, the more she realized something powerful: acceptance begins within. When she embraced herself as she was, the world slowly began to embrace her too. Her presence became a silent statement that beauty and worth are not defined by flawless bodies, but by the resilience of the soul. With newfound courage, she ventured into fields she had once only dreamed of. She returned to her first love, painting, not just privately, but as an artist who wanted to share her voice with the world. Her work spoke louder than her words ever could, carrying emotions that transcended pity. Soon, she found herself invited to modeling campaigns, where her wheelchair no longer symbolized limitation, but empowerment. The camera didn't capture her scars, it captured her spirit. She also stepped into the world of media, becoming a television anchor. Her voice steady, her presence inspiring. Each new path was a reminder that limitations exist only where we accept them. By daring to be visible, she redefined not only her identity, but also the narrative of what it means to live with resilience. Her story began to travel beyond borders. She found herself standing on stages, not as a victim, but as a voice for the unheard. She spoke for women who were silenced, for children who were forgotten, for anyone who felt their life had ended because of circumstances beyond their control. Her wheelchair became her podium. Her scars became her credentials. She stood not to gain sympathy, but to ignite strength in others. Soon, her efforts were recognized by global organizations, and she was chosen to represent the cause of women and children at an international level. What once felt like a shattered life had become a platform for transformation. She realized that her pain was never meant to destroy her, it was meant to prepare her to heal others. Achievements and accolades began to follow her. Recognition from media, features in global lists celebrating young leaders, invitations from prestigious platforms. But to her, success was never about titles or applause. Success was the quiet smile of her son, the joy of seeing her art touch someone's heart, the strength of knowing she had turned despair into purpose. She had once thought her life had ended the day of the accident. Now she understood that was not the end, but the beginning of her true journey. Success, she discovered, was not reaching the life you once imagined, but embracing the life you are given and making it extraordinary. And in her heart, she knew that her broken wings had carried her higher than she ever could have flown. All around her, she noticed how people clung to an illusion of a perfect life. The perfect family, the perfect body, the perfect career. She too had once believed in that myth, thinking happiness was found in fulfilling those ideals. But the accident stripped all of that away, and in losing it, she found the truth: perfection is a cage. True freedom begins the moment you stop chasing flawless dreams and start embracing your imperfect reality. She realized that happiness is not when everything goes according to plan, but when you accept that life has its own rhythm, its own surprises. Sometimes those surprises break you, sometimes they rebuild you, and in both there is beauty. With each passing day, she became more determined to tell the world, stop waiting for perfection. Life is too short to measure against impossible standards. For years, she had hidden her pain behind smiles, pretending to be stronger than she felt. But she discovered that vulnerability is not weakness, it is courage. The day she shared her true story, openly admitting her fears, her despair, and her struggles, something magical happened. People didn't turn away, they leaned closer. They didn't pity her, they felt inspired. She learned that when you expose your wounds, you invite others to heal too. Vulnerability built bridges stronger than any mask of perfection ever could. Her story was no longer just about her. It became a mirror for anyone who had felt broken, a reminder that even in fragility, there is immense power. She began to see life as a cycle of falling and rising. Failure was no longer an enemy, but a teacher. When she failed to stand again, she learned patience. When she failed to bear her own children, she discovered adoption. When she failed to fit into society's narrow boxes, she carved a new space for herself. Each failure carried a gift, though it came wrapped in pain. And each time she rose again, she became stronger, wiser, more compassionate. The scars on her body became symbols, not of tragedy, but of resilience. She often told herself, if life pushes me down 10 times, I will rise 11. And in living that truth, she transformed the meaning of failure from something to fear into something to embrace. One morning, as sunlight filtered through her window, she found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. Gratitude not for what she had lost, but for what she still had. She could see, she could breathe, she could love, she could create, she could nurture a child, she could inspire. Gratitude turned her despair into peace and her scars into blessings. She began each day with a simple practice, naming 3 things she was grateful for. Some days it was the laughter of her son, other days the colors on her canvas, and sometimes simply the breath in her lungs. Gratitude didn't erase her struggles, but it shifted her focus from what was missing to what was present. And that shift became her secret to living fully. Despite it all, as the years passed, she realized that limits are often illusions created by the mind. The wheelchair that once felt like a prison had become her chariot of strength. The label of disabled no longer defined her. She had redefined herself. By challenging her own boundaries, she inspired countless others to do the same. She painted, she spoke, she mothered, she dreamed. She showed that a broken body cannot cage a free spirit. Every day she lived was proof that life's worth is not measured by what you cannot do, but by what you choose to do with what you have. And she chose to live boldly, fearlessly, and unapologetically. Life had stripped her of control in so many ways, but she discovered that the most powerful freedom remained untouched, the freedom to choose her response. She could choose despair, or she could choose hope. She could choose bitterness, or she could choose gratitude. She could choose to remain hidden, or she could step into the light. Each choice, though small, became a brick in the foundation of her new life. She understood that circumstances do not define destiny. Choices do. By choosing courage, she became an example for her son, showing him that strength is not the absence of struggle, but the decision to keep moving forward despite it. And in teaching him, she reminded herself daily that no matter how broken life may seem, you always hold the power to shape it with your choices. Growing up, she had been taught that beauty was tied to appearance, flawless skin, graceful posture, a body without scars. But after her accident, those ideals crumbled. She no longer fit the mold of perfection, and at first it made her feel invisible. Then one day, she looked at her reflection and saw something she had never seen before: strength in her eyes, courage in her smile, resilience in her posture. That was beauty, raw, authentic, unbreakable. She began to celebrate her scars, for they were proof of survival. She dressed with style, posed with confidence, and carried herself as though every imperfection was a crown. In doing so, she taught others to see beauty not as something skin deep, but as the light that radiates when the soul refuses to be dimmed. Her story could have ended in that hospital bed, but she refused to let pain have the final word. Instead, she transformed it into purpose. She used her platform to advocate for those who felt silenced, especially women and children trapped in systems of inequality. She knew what it meant to feel powerless, and she vowed to be a voice for those still in the shadows. Each time she spoke, her wheelchair was not a symbol of weakness, but a throne of strength. She proved that true leaders are not the ones who live without hardship, but the ones who rise despite it. Pain gave her a mission, and purpose gave her wings. In the rush of life, most people chase a future that never arrives or dwell on a past that cannot be changed. But she had learned that the real treasure lies in the present moment. After all, she knew how fragile life could be. One accident had stolen her old world in seconds. So now she cherished every smile from her son, every conversation with a friend, every splash of paint on a canvas. She discovered that the present was not something to race through, but to savor. And in embracing the now, she felt richer than she ever had before. She no longer measured life in years or accomplishments, but in moments fully lived. Her courage began to ripple outward. What started as a personal journey of survival turned into a movement of empowerment. People from across the world reached out, saying her story had given them hope. Some decided to pursue dreams they had abandoned. Others found the strength to leave toxic situations. Many learned to embrace their scars instead of hiding them. She realized that the impact of one life lived authentically can spark a fire in countless others. Her journey was not just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who believed in second chances, in rising after the fall, in choosing light over darkness. She had once thought she was broken beyond repair. Now she knew she was a beacon, guiding others to see that even in brokenness, there is brilliance. For years, resentment had lived quietly inside her. Resentment for the accident, for the abandonment, for the unfairness of life. But she realized that carrying bitterness was like drinking poison and expecting others to suffer. Forgiveness, she discovered, was not about excusing what happened. It was about freeing herself. She chose to forgive her past, to forgive those who hurt her, and even to forgive herself for believing she was not enough. In forgiveness, she found release. The heavy chains of anger loosened, and her heart became light again. Forgiveness was not weakness, it was power. It was the gift she gave herself, and it allowed her to step forward with peace instead of pain. Resilience became the theme of her life. She learned that resilience is not about never breaking, but about refusing to stay broken. Each scar was proof that she had fallen, but also that she had risen. Resilience taught her to see failure as fuel, pain as a teacher, and obstacles as opportunities. She no longer feared difficulties because she knew she could endure them. She became living proof that the human spirit can bend without shattering. And even when life takes away everything you thought you needed, it still leaves you with the strength to begin again. She often wondered what legacy she would leave behind. Would people remember her for her wheelchair, for her scars, for her struggles? No. She wanted to be remembered for her courage, for her compassion, for the hope she gave others. She realized that legacy is not built on wealth or fame, but on the lives you touch. Her son would grow up knowing his mother was not defeated by tragedy, but transformed by it. The children she advocated for, the women she encouraged, the people inspired by her art and her story, they were all part of her legacy. And that legacy was not of sorrow, but of hope. Every morning, she faced a choice to give up or to keep going. And every day, she chose life. Not the life she once imagined, but the life she had been given, and she chose to make it meaningful. She laughed, she created, she dreamed. She learned that true living was not about waiting for happiness to arrive, but about creating joy in the moment. By choosing life daily, she transformed her existence into a celebration. She no longer measured her worth by what she had lost, but by what she continued to give. And in that choice, she became unshakable. Her journey was never about tragedy, it was about triumph. From an unwanted marriage to a life-changing accident, from despair to empowerment, she had turned every loss into a lesson, every scar into a story, every failure into a foundation. She showed the world that true power is not in avoiding hardship, but in rising above it. Her message to everyone was simple yet profound. Don't wait for life to be perfect. Don't hide from your scars. Don't give up when you fall. Instead, embrace your struggles, learn from them, and let them shape you into someone stronger than you ever imagined. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with others, and visit our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us all of the incredible strength within.